There are a lot of operators in Siege that have been added over the years of development. However, a big problem in Siege is that only a few operators get picked consistently at the higher ranks. This results in you only really seeing the same 10 to 15 operators on each side without much variety. This is caused mostly by operators' gadgets slowly becoming outdated, or by Ubisoft buffing operators so hard that they jump to the top. Dokkaebi is a great example. So, in today's video, I'm going to be going through every operator I think could use a rework next, and give you and Ubisoft my ideas for each of them. And maybe, just maybe, this will motivate Ubisoft to rework these operators because they desperately need it. Now, the first operator that I think we can all agree on needing a rework is Tachanka. It's just the how that's the difficult part. I talked about this idea in my previous video on this topic, but I think it still applies now. In this second rework concept I have, I'd recommend adding a toggleable fire mode like what is available on Grim to Tachanka's fireball launcher. This would allow him to enable or disable grenade bouncing. The point of this firing mode would be to allow his fire to explode immediately on impact, making it easier to hit shots over surfaces while still allowing him to bounce his fire as well. When bouncing is disabled, his gadget will function similarly to Capitao, where the fire detonates immediately and falls into place. I would also recommend making his gadget an underbarrel attachment similar to Buck. This way Tachanka wouldn't have to put his primary weapon away to use his gadget. This is another one of the biggest weaknesses of Tachanka, the fact that he is significantly vulnerable while using his gadget. If he can easily swap between his gadget and primary weapon like Buck can, this issue would go away immediately. I would also like to see the fire itself get a slightly larger radius to make his fire scarier to run through. These changes would make Tachanka more competitive and would allow him to compete with Goyo and Smoke. Sledge is an operator that has fallen off significantly in the meta as well because of his gadget becoming outdated compared to his competition. And while I don't think he needs a major rework, I do think some quality of life changes towards him could help him compete. Firstly, I think Ubisoft should change his gadget to where he can hold it instead of having to pull it out each time he wants to hit something. This will make it function similar to like a third weapon, and it will allow him to open walls a lot faster since the animation would be quicker. Additionally, they could do something like what Kudo suggested in his Siege mailbox video on the topic, where Sledge's hammer would concuss and hit defenders with shrapnel near where his hammer destroyed a surface. This would help differentiate him from Ram and Buck, and it would help him pick up frags off his vertical play since enemies would be disoriented after he makes the vertical hole. I'm sure there are other things that Ubisoft could come up with, but I definitely think this would be a step in the right direction. IQ is an operator that has fallen out of the meta because of the fact that her gadget has just become extremely niche over the years of balancing. IQ can see electronics through walls using her scanner, but to do that, she has to make herself vulnerable by only holding her pistol out. That's why I think that her wrist-mounted scanner should be replaced with goggles. This will allow her to still have her primary out while her gadget is active, which is huge. But I wouldn't stop there. I also think that if she comes within arm's reach of any gadget, Ubisoft should give her the ability to hack into devices with her gadget. This would reward IQ for getting up close to gadgets, and it would give her a manner of dealing with them outside of just shooting them. This could be especially strong against Valk or Maestro, since she could turn their cameras over to her team just by getting close. I think to balance this, they can make it to where every time she hacked the device, her gadget would go on cooldown, similar to Solis's old scan mechanic, and she could only have 3 hacked gadgets at a time. I think these two changes would help make her more useful, while not outright replacing Brava, since IQ would have to get up close to successfully hack gadgets. I think Alibi is another operator that is in desperate need of some changes. That's because her gadget very rarely tricks players above platinum, and most of the time she is just picked for her guns. To fix this, I would give Alibi the ability to change the stance of her clones with a click of a button. This would allow her to make her clones change stances, potentially catching defenders off guard, and it would give her more opportunities for her to surprise attackers by having her clones prone near doorways. I'd also make her clones replicate her weapon skins, uniforms, headgears, and her attachments to make it even harder to tell. These two changes would make her chances of tricking higher ranked players more likely, while not making her overpowered. Thermite is an operator that suffers from the competition just outclassing him in every way. That's because Ace can open walls from a distance and faster, making him the default choice for getting walls open. I would solve this by making Thermite's gadget much faster. I would 3 times the speed it takes for Thermite's charge to actually detonate so that it functions similar to a breach charge. This would make it harder for Bandit to bandit trick you and Tubarão to freeze him, and it would allow him to compete with Ace a little bit better. I also think that they could do something similar to what Kudos covered with Sledge. They could have Thermite's charge charges blast shrapnel in the area behind his breaches, and any gadgets or enemies in the trajectory will be destroyed or take damage. This could offer a good explanation as to why his breach charges cause shrapnel to blast backwards while other hard breaching gadgets don't, and it would help him be different from the rest of the hard breachers in Siege. Another operator that suffers from being outclassed is Callie. Her gadget for dealing with bulletproof utility is strong, and she can also be useful for getting bandit batteries off of a wall, but her only having a primary sniper puts her in a significant hole compared to her competition, Action Sophia. This is why, if I was Ubisoft, I would give Callie an additional primary option that her underbarrel launcher could be attached to. This could be an AR, or if they wanted to keep her to a sniper role, they could give her a DMR instead, but they need to give her another primary. This would instantly cause her pick rate to jump up, and it would make her more competitive. I would probably remove one of her lances to go along with this though, so that she wouldn't be overpowered in comparison to her competitors. Now, as most of you likely know, the recruit rework is one of the most hated reworks in the game's history, and after the rework they are still underpicked to a severe degree. There are two things that I would do to solve this. Firstly, I would allow for both recruits to bring 2 of the same secondary gadget. This would allow for really strong possibilities like 2 nitro cells, 4 impacts, 4 flashes, or 4 nades, which would make the fact that they don't have a gadget much less of an issue. Also, I would add way more options to their weapon kit. I think that each recruit should have 1 weapon from each category. So Striker should have a DMR, LMG, AR, SMG, and shotgun primary option, and a handgun, machine pistol, and shotgun as secondary options. Same thing with Sentry, except he shouldn't have access to an LMG since they typically aren't options on defense. This would allow players to further cater their recruits to their playstyle, and it would offer way more gameplay variety to the recruits. These 2 changes would go a long way, and I think they should have released like this in the first place. Now for Caveira, she is another operator that has struggled on pick rate charts over the past few years, and she has always been an operator people considered to be weak. Because of this, I think Ubisoft should give her some major changes to aid in her ability to roam. Firstly, I really liked another idea suggested in one of Kudos's mailbox videos where Caveira can track footprints of attackers. The way I would make this function is when Caveira enters a silent step, she can see muddy footprints of all attackers, but when this ability is off, she cannot see the footprints. This would allow Caveira to follow stragglers on the attack to potentially pick up an interrogation, and it would allow her to give additional information to her team as well. The only other problem with Caveira then would be that her guns are terribly weak. I would fix this by buffing her M12's damage and by lowering the damage drop off of her pistol. I think these 3 changes combined would make Caveira a fierce competitor of the roaming role and wouldn't sacrifice her unique aesthetic as a stealth operator. Now the final operator, Dokkaebi, is the only operator in this entire video that I think needs a rework because she is too overpowered. However, I think a rework for Dokkaebi is necessary. The reason is because Dokkaebi is just a jack of all trades. She has great weapons, amazing secondary gadgets, she can call defenders to reveal their position and force them off cameras, and she can hack into the defense's camera system. The way I would nerf her is by changing the functionality of her tablet. When Dokkaebi goes to initiate a call, I would make it to where she would have to choose 2 defenders to call instead of getting to call the entire team. This means that Dokkaebi would have to choose whether to call the dead defenders or the alive ones, and the operator she didn't call would still be able to access cameras. However, if she did choose to call the dead defenders and not any of the alive ones, they would have to wait out her call to be able to access cameras. This would make her more fair to go against and would alleviate her ability to shut down the defense's intel game with the click of a button, but it would still allow her to be extremely strong with a coordinated team and if she timed her calls right on the right people. Anyways, that is going to wrap up today's video. Let me know your opinion on my rework ideas in the comments down below. And if you have any ideas of your own, feel free to leave them in the comments down below as well. I'd love to hear you guys' ideas, and maybe, just maybe, your ideas will get featured in a new video. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to watch another one just like this one, a video will be popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you'll enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.